state.
Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Bernie Sanders crushed their competition in New Hampshire, leaving no question that voters in the Granite State are angry at Washington and worried about the economy.
We are going to make America so great again, maybe greater than ever before.
Together, we have sent the message that will echo from Wall Street to Washington.
While the wins were expected, the big story coming out of New Hampshire on the Republican side was the tight race for the places behind Donald Trump. Kasich finished a clear second, with Cruz, Bush, and Rubio close behind. That could end up prolonging the Republican nominating contest as voters decide between the different candidates.
If you don't have a seatbelt, go get one. We're going to shake this country from top to bottom.
You all have reset the race, and for that I am really grateful.
Meanwhile, Clinton trying to look at her loss in New Hampshire positively, saying the outcome was expected, but the future looks good.
Now we take this campaign to the entire country. We're going to fight for every vote in every state.
But as the candidates now begin a battle for the South, some analysts say Sanders may not be as easy to shake off as Clinton predicts, especially if he can close his polling gap in South Carolina and beyond. On the Republican side, the top questions moving forward: who moves on to South Carolina, who drops out now, and who becomes the primary alternative to Donald Trump? Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
I wouldn't be in Hillary Clinton's shoes right now for the world, because, man, the knives are out for her. And if she gets indicted on all this scandal, it's going to cripple the Democratic Party in this election. I just don't understand what they're doing. Well, our political correspondent, David Brody, joins us now from Manchester. Hey, David, is Kasich, in your opinion, a one-trick pony, or has he got some legs to go on the next part of the race?
Well, I think he's a one-trick pony at this point, Pat, but there's a big asterisk with John Kasich, and that is, will Marco Rubio, will Jeb Bush, will they all kind of start to fade and get out of the race, and then Kasich becomes that establishment alternative, and I think that's what the Kasich campaign is hoping for. Look, I mean, Kasich did, quote, well here on Tuesday night, but then again, what is well? As you said at the top of the show, he lost to Trump 2-1. The problem is he was running for, in essence, governor of New Hampshire up here. I mean, basically, he was spending a lot of time here. He had a great ground game. The problem is he's not going to do well in South Carolina. At least that's the sense. He'll get a little bit of a bounce, but Trump's the guy to beat in South Carolina. I don't think there's any question about that. And Ted Cruz obviously is going to do well there with a GOP electorate made up predominantly of evangelical Christians. 60%, Pat, in South Carolina make up that primary audience.
Did you see Fred Barnes? He had an article I read today indicating that Trump is at this point basically unbeatable, that he's just going to carry it on through. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know about unbeatable, but I will tell you this. If Donald Trump wins South Carolina, then we can start to basically go down that unbeatable scenario. And why is that? Well, look, I mean, after South Carolina comes those SEC primary states. And I know the Cruz campaign says they are solid in those states, in those southern states. The problem, though, is that with Donald Trump winning New Hampshire, then potentially winning South Carolina, he's going to have so much momentum at that point that that Trump train that we hear so much about could indeed be leaving the station in those SEC primaries. Remember, Pat, Donald Trump has had huge rallies down there, 20,000, 30,000 in Mobile and other places. I mean, he's a force in the South. It's not just Ted Cruz. And so he is a force to be reckoned with. And boy, I tell you what, there are a lot of people scratching their heads over it. But here he is, Pat.
Well, you know, the governor of New Jersey did a number on poor old Rubio. You know, it was absolutely brutal. It didn't help him much, but it certainly didn't wound Rubio. Where do Bush and Rubio go from here, in your opinion?
Well, boy, it is going to be a nasty drag-down fight in South Carolina, not only between Trump and Cruz, but Bush and Rubio. Look, as a matter of fact, the Bush campaign already putting out an internal memo saying it is time to basically take down Rubio and Kasich in South Carolina. So we got two different fights going on in South Carolina. Trump and Cruz, it's going to be nasty. Then Bush, Rubio, Kasich, all in that other lane, and it's going to be nasty there. And Bush is going to be the intended antagonists. There's no question about it. The question for Rubio is, where does he win exactly? I mean, you know, it was third in Iowa, and he was excited about that, but then he regressed here in New Hampshire. South Carolina looks like it's going to be a Trump-Cruz affair, so Rubio probably not going to do as well in South Carolina. And then the SEC primaries. And so you wonder where Bush wins, you wonder where Rubio wins. Quite frankly, Pat, you wonder where Kasich wins. Maybe March 8th in Michigan, potentially, but that's far down the road, and the Trump train may be leaving the station at that point. And then there's March 15th, the Ohio GOP primary, where Kasich should do well. But will he be in the race at that point? Probably, but that might be his last stand.
What about Sanders? You know, he's Brooklyn, he's a socialist, he's in his 70s. I mean, at what point does he drop by the wayside and Hillary takes over? There's nobody else out there besides her if he falls. What do you think?
Well, there's so much to unpack here. First of all, if you're losing by 20-plus points to a 74-year-old socialist, you got some issues. I don't think there's any question about it, Pat. Look, here's the thing. Bernie Sanders won up here with young voters. He won up here on the trust issue. And most importantly for Hillary Clinton, and this is a bad thing for the Clinton campaign, Bernie Sanders won with female voters. And so now there is this perception that Hillary Clinton is going to have to do some new outreach to a younger, more female crowd that she used to have 20-plus years ago. Doesn't have those folks today. She goes to Nevada, South Carolina, where she's doing better, much better in the polls, but Bernie's going to get a bounce from this for sure. I do want to bring up something real quick about Ted Cruz before I forget, because you never know. With lack of sleep, I may forget it, Pat. But, you know, Ted Cruz's third-place finish in New Hampshire, that's a pretty big story. The media's not giving it much attention, but let's remember, Ted Cruz is the, quote, evangelical candidate, or at least that's in quotes. And then he comes to New Hampshire in libertarian, live free or die New Hampshire, and does a pretty solid third. That's called, as I like to call it, a T-evangelical message. He can play to evangelicals. He can play to the Tea Party. So he's a force. I don't think there's any question about it. And I think this Trump-Cruz thing is going to get real nasty.
Last question. You've been observing this, and I certainly have. Not only have I observed it, I've been in one of them, but I've never seen anything like this ever. What do you think?
No, I haven't either. I mean, this is just, it's really an amazing race, to quote, I believe, a CBS show, right? You know, Donald Trump has played to the angry electorate that's out there. They're frustrated. They're angry. A lot of evangelicals are sick and tired of what's been going on as well, and he's playing to some of those evangelicals as well. Remember, Donald Trump actually comes in second in the evangelical vote. He did it in Iowa. He'll probably do it again in South Carolina. So he's playing to a sick and tired audience, and that's why Chris Christie most likely will be out of this race, because he wanted that angry electorate. He was the, quote, you know, guy that was frustrated and angry, but Donald Trump took up the real estate, no pun intended, that Chris Christie wanted. And I tell you, Pat, there is something called an intangible. There is emotion in politics, and there's a great book called The Politics of Emoting by Drew Weston, a political science professor at Emory University. He talks about how people don't really vote with their brain, they vote with their heart. And Donald Trump clearly has resonated. He has basically formed a love connection, if you will, with many of the voters around this country. It's really astonishing.
Well, he's coming down here to be on this program and be at Regent in another week or two, and he's been a friend of mine for years and years and years, but who in the world would have thought it, Dave? I can't believe it, that this guy is a gambling impresario, a real estate developer, and suddenly he just wins it all. Okay, David Brody, God bless you.